Millions from New Jersey, all the way to Maine, live with a hidden risk, a threat that often fades from immediate concern, yet constantly looms in the background. It's the very real and potentially devastating threat of a catastrophic hurricane striking the Northeast. This isn't just a coastal concern, its impacts would ripple far inland. We often think of monster storms as primarily a southern problem, associating them with the Gulf Coast and Florida. But history, coupled with scientific data, paints a different, more concerning picture. The records show that the Northeast is not immune. The Northeast's dense urban centers, combined with its unique and complex coastline, create a perfect, or rather imperfect, recipe for disaster. The geography and the concentration of population amplify the potential for widespread damage. The question isn't if a major hurricane will eventually strike this region, because the forces of nature are relentless, but when it will strike, and, more importantly, whether we will be adequately prepared to face its fury. Are we truly ready for the inevitable? Decades of relative calm can lull us into a false sense of security, making us underestimate the power of nature. This leads to increased development along vulnerable coastal areas, with people building homes and businesses, often forgetting or ignoring the lessons of the past. But the underlying atmospheric patterns that can steer hurricanes northward are always present, a constant threat lurking beneath the surface. A seemingly slight shift in prevailing weather patterns could be all it takes to send a powerful, destructive storm straight into the heart of our most densely populated corridor. Imagine a towering wall of water, relentlessly driven by sustained winds of 130 miles per hour, or even higher, surging with unstoppable force into New York Harbor or Boston's historic waterfront. This type of devastation has happened before in the Northeast's history, and with the accelerating effects of rising sea levels and increasingly warmer ocean temperatures, the next major storm could potentially be even more catastrophic than anything we've witnessed in recent memory. Our critical infrastructure, including subways, major airports, and vulnerable power grids, is known to be deeply vulnerable to such extreme weather events. The time for complacency and inaction is definitively over. We must take decisive action and prepare now, well before the first hurricane-force winds begin to howl and the storm clouds gather on the horizon. Meteorologists, weather forecasters, and climate scientists, along with countless researchers dedicated to understanding our planet, have been sounding the alarm for years, utilizing sophisticated weather warning systems, advanced hurricane tracking maps, and increasingly accurate storm predictions. They've warned for years that the Northeast is not only vulnerable, but statistically overdue for a major hurricane. The geographical features of the Northeast coastline, including the New England coast and the broader Atlantic seaboard, make it particularly susceptible. The last direct hit of this magnitude was the Great New England Hurricane of 1938, a storm that left an indelible mark on the region. That was a lifetime ago, nearly a century past, with far less at stake in terms of population density and infrastructure along the coast. Experts overwhelmingly agree the level of risk is steadily rising, presenting a clear and present danger to our coastal communities. This is primarily because warmer ocean temperatures are providing more energy to fuel stronger and more intense storms. These powerful storms can now maintain their strength and even survive farther north than previously thought possible, extending the range of potential impact. Each seemingly quiet year, each season that passes without a major event, doesn't make us inherently safer or less vulnerable. In fact, it paradoxically increases the odds of an even more devastating event when a major hurricane finally does strike. The scale of the 1938 hurricane serves as the benchmark, a stark reminder and a chilling example of a worst-case scenario. And it's a scenario that could realistically happen again in our lifetime. Today, thanks to advancements in technology, we'd undoubtedly have more advanced warning systems in place. But the potential impact on our densely populated modern coastline, with its sprawling cities and crowded beaches, would be almost unimaginable in its scope and devastation. The scientific consensus is overwhelmingly clear. We must actively look beyond the limitations of recent memory and short-term thinking. We need to heed the lessons embedded in the region's violent weather history, studying historical hurricane records and storm archives to understand the true potential for destruction. It's human nature to forget or downplay what we haven't personally experienced, especially when it comes to rare but catastrophic events. But the atmosphere, governed by immutable physical laws, remembers every past event and holds the potential for future extremes. The presentation of scientific data and predictive models is not intended as a scare tactic or fear-mongering. Rather, it's a crucial call to action, urging us to take proactive steps to protect ourselves and our communities. Therefore, we must diligently prepare for the inevitable fury and destructive power that will be unleashed by the next great storm when it makes its inevitable landfall. To see the future, look to the past. The 1938 Long Island Express struck without warning, killing nearly 700 and reshaping the coastline. Hurricane Bob in 1991, though weaker, still caused billions in damage and weeks-long outages. Then came Superstorm Sandy in 2012, a hybrid storm that flooded New York's subways and caused $70 billion in damage. Sandy proved a storm doesn't need to be a major hurricane to be catastrophic. The right track and size can be just as devastating. These storms are not distant memories, they're warnings. The 1938 hurricane shows the destruction of a direct hit. Bob reminds us even smaller storms are costly. Sandy exposed the vulnerability of our urban infrastructure. The threat hasn't vanished, it's waiting for the right conditions to return. The biggest factor increasing hurricane risk in the Northeast is rising ocean temperatures. Hurricanes draw energy from warm water. Historically, cold northern waters weaken them. Now the Atlantic is warming, letting storms stay stronger farther north. A hurricane that once weakened before landfall can now hit as a Category 2 or 3. Warmer air also means heavier rainfall. Future storms could drop 15 or even 20 inches, causing catastrophic inland flooding. The dual threat of storm surge and extreme rain could paralyze the region for weeks. This isn't theory. Storms are already intensifying more rapidly and maintaining strength farther north. The Northeast can no longer count on cold water as a shield. The ocean's protection is fading, leaving millions more exposed. The risk is growing with every passing year. Complacency is the Northeast's greatest weakness. Major hurricanes are rare, so most residents don't see them as a real threat. People worry about blizzards, not Category 3 hurricanes. This mindset means few have emergency kits, evacuation plans, or flood insurance. Much of the region's infrastructure was built for a different climate and remains exposed. Coastal development has put more people and property in harm's way than ever before. Evacuating millions would be a logistical nightmare. Many businesses and municipalities lack robust plans for a true worst-case scenario. Without recent catastrophe as a motivator, hurricane preparedness is often ignored, leaving the region dangerously exposed. Imagine the 1938 hurricane striking today. Long Island, once rural, is now densely populated, millions at risk. A 20-foot storm surge would flood entire neighborhoods, commercial centers, and critical infrastructure. The economic damage could reach hundreds of billions, even $1 trillion. It would be the costliest disaster in U.S. history with ripple effects nationwide. Even with days of warning, evacuating millions would be chaotic and dangerous. Those unable to leave would face extreme peril. After the storm, millions could be without power for weeks or months. The destruction would create a housing and unemployment crisis. Major transportation and utilities could be out for months. Recovery would take a generation. Experts aren't speaking in hypotheticals, they're issuing urgent warnings. Meteorologist Rick De Silva says, just because the last 20 years were quiet doesn't mean the next 20 will be. The data points to a major hurricane in the Northeast as a certainty, not a possibility. Catastrophe risk expert Kerry Porter's models show even a less powerful storm could cause $100 billion in damage if it hits the right spot. Flooded subways, airports, and financial centers would cripple the region. Our vulnerability is a choice. We can reduce risk through preparation and mitigation. This means stronger building codes, elevated infrastructure, and family evacuation plans. Experts have seen devastation elsewhere. They know it can happen here. Every dollar spent on preparedness saves 7 in recovery. The clock is ticking. Our window to prepare is closing. We must act now. Preparedness starts at home. Every family should have a go-bag with essentials and a clear evacuation plan. Know your evacuation zone and discuss the plan with everyone in your household. Businesses must develop continuity plans, backup data, and secure property. Invest in generators or remote work options to survive prolonged outages. Cities and states must enforce stronger building codes and invest in infrastructure like seawalls and improved drainage. Nature-based solutions, restoring wetlands and dunes, can buffer storm surge. Public education and community drills foster a culture of readiness. Neighbors should check on each other, especially the vulnerable. When everyone prepares, the region becomes safer and more resilient. We can't afford to wait for storm clouds to gather on the horizon. We can't stand idly by, hoping the threat will simply dissipate. The time for passive observation is long gone. The next great hurricane, a force of nature beyond our control, will arrive on its own schedule, completely indifferent to our preparations, or lack thereof. It won't wait for us to be ready. History, with its devastating lessons, science, with its predictive power, and the unwavering warnings of experts all converge to tell us one thing. The risk is not just a possibility, it is real, tangible, and growing with each passing day. The stakes are higher than ever before. Our coastlines are more crowded than ever, with bustling communities and vibrant cities packed along the water's edge. Our infrastructure has become increasingly complex, a tangled web of interconnected systems that are vulnerable to disruption. And the ocean, the very source of these storms, is warmer than ever, fueling their intensity and destructive potential. A storm that was considered catastrophic in the past, a benchmark of devastation, would be nothing short of apocalyptic today, given the increased vulnerabilities and interconnectedness of our modern world. We must replace our collective amnesia, the tendency to forget the lessons of the past, with unwavering resolve, and make a fundamental shift, moving away from simply reacting to disasters after they strike and proactively preparing for them before they arrive. This is not a burden for one to carry alone, it's a shared challenge. Families, businesses, and governments at every level all have a crucial role to play in building a more resilient future. We are not helpless in the face of this threat. We have the knowledge, the technology, and the tools readily available to prepare effectively. The steps we need to take are not complex or insurmountable. They are practical, achievable, and within our reach. Make a plan, discuss it with your loved ones, and practice it regularly. Secure your property, protect your home from the elements, and minimize potential damage. Invest in resilience, build stronger, and adapt to the changing climate. The work we do now, the investments we make today, are our best defense against the storms of tomorrow. Prepare now, before the next warning is issued, before the sirens blare, and before the storm is at our doorstep. The time for complacency, for denial, for inaction is definitively over. The time to build a resilient Northeast, a region that can withstand the challenges of a changing climate, is now. Our safety,